The amount of players signing up to FPL has declined for the first time in the 20-year history of the game. Team leagues and early team news have plagued the community. Player prices are so cheap, you don't even need to think anymore. And for the first time ever, someone has won FPL by doing whatever a computer has told them to do. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan. Today we're going to talk about the current state of FPL and how we can use it to our advantage to improve our future ranks and win our mini-leagues. Now, people complain about early team news being unfair, but this isn't new. It's arguably better now than it was previously. Now, a few years ago, when FPL deadline was only 1 hour before the first kickoff, we used to get a full team sheet 15 minutes before the deadline of that first kickoff. Now, leaks have always been there. They just used to happen more often in those private group chats. So you were competing against people who had the team news, they had the team leaks, you just didn't know about it. Now, the leaks are public. Technically, everyone has access to them if you know where to find them. So therefore, the playing field has never been more level than ever before. Leakers, they aren't going anywhere. If I'm totally blunt about this, there's too much clout to be gained by leaking. People are gaining massive followings from leaking the information, so they are going to do it no matter what. And if you choose to avoid those leaks that are accessible to you, you are going to put yourself at a disadvantage straight away. So all I can say is use those leaks, consume live content during the build up to deadline, even if you're in a different time zone. I know it's more difficult because if you don't do it, you are going to be at a disadvantage. If you don't do it, you will get left behind. And I think this is one way that FPL has changed. You have to be on it. It's available to so many people. If you're not doing it, you're in a bad place. Now, recently, you may have heard a lot of people talk about analytics and an analytical approach to FPL. This is a big topic of discussion at the moment, and I want to talk about what that means and how it is in helping people to improve their FPL ranks. Now, this is going to be a generic simplification, and not all of these things that I talk about right now are going to apply to every analytical manager. So do take this with a pinch of salt, but at the same time, I think there is something to be learned here. So, in general, the reputation of the analytical manager is doing whatever a robot tells them to do. A robot, an AI, a model, they are using this information to just tell them what to do. What transfer should I make, robot? This one? Okay, I'll do it. Now, whilst many of these analytical managers, they are using models, solvers, and automated tools to decide which moves to make with very little original thought, the reality is that being an analytical manager really means using data to inform your decisions and picking players based on expected points or expected value. You may have heard these terms used before, EV for expected value, expected points. We've spoken about a little bit on this channel before, but picking optimal players is what we're talking about really, who are most likely to give a good outcome based on data alone. And this often means picking low risk players and often avoiding those differential or maverick picks. In the world of analytics, watching football games to inform decision making is actually discouraged as you seek to eliminate the human bias side of things. And analytical managers often land on an almost identical team and transfers each week to thousands of other managers following the same method. Yes, that means that these teams are going to be very template teams, but it works. The winner of FPL 2023-24, Jonas Sand Lawback, is a member of the analytics community and the first analytics manager to win FPL. Now, he was outside the top 100,000 places last year and has never actually finished in any of those top ranks, and he has this to say after his success in FPL this year. In recent years, through other fantasy football games, I've got a totally new perspective when it comes to fantasy football. I'm a huge fan of analytics and optimization. It's no news that you need some positive variance or luck in order to win FPL, but it also requires much from you. You have to put in hours, you have to do the research. I recently adapted the analytics into my playing style. I'm now 100% sure I would never have become #1 if it had not been for that. It's mainly models I use where they take a lot of expected stats. I don't know how many stats they use and how exactly they use it, but the end product is what they call expected value. Yes, this manager won FPL the whole game, not by understanding many of the individual data points, but just understanding, well, okay, this player has this amount of expected points, this expected value, and therefore they will probably be quite good for my FPL team. They picked those players and they won FPL. And this is not unique to the #1 manager alone. What we've seen this season is a lot of the analytics style managers performing incredibly well. Now, what you see in front of you now, guys, is a median rank of the top FPL manager groupings, and there's various different groupings we have here. At the bottom, with an average rank around 110k, we have the live FPL legends. These are considered the most famous FPL managers around the world, often content creators. We've got the prime data here. We've got the Elite 64. These are managers who historically have performed very well. Then we have the Elite 1000, but beating them all are 3 groupings of FPL managers who form part of specific analytics community. So we have the Bullet Wisdom community of analytic managers. We have the Analytics Elite 64 and the Analytics Elite 65 to 128, the second division of analytics managers. So what you can see here is we have all of these historically fantastic FPL managers doing, well, significantly worse a lot of the time than those managers who are following analytics models, who are using this new way of playing FPL to succeed. All of them have significantly better ranks than every other FPL manager you previously thought was a great legendary manager of FPL. We saw the trend again last year as well. The analytics managers really outcompeting all of those typical historical legendary managers. You know, it's a trend here. You know, this is not something that has just happened for one season. You can also very clearly see when you go to the FPL website, they have a list on the FPL page where you can see the best leagues in the world. So the leagues that contain the most best managers, if that makes sense. And the 2 leagues you see at the top, Bullet Wisdom and FPL Optimize, are 2 separate community leagues for analytical managers. Only analytics managers can enter into these leagues, and both occasions, both of these leagues, we see them at the top, #1 and #2. And outside of that, we have communities with tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of managers inside them. For example, the YouTube League for Let's Talk FPL, Fantasy Football Scout, FPL Harry as well there. These are leagues with tens of thousands of people in, and yet it's still the small communities of analytical managers who on average have the better managers among them, the higher scoring managers for these leagues. So again, more evidence that analytical managers are doing better than the average. You can also just have a quick glance through Twitter. A lot of the people who use analytics are very open about that on Twitter and share their progress, and they all have fantastic ranks in the top few thousand in FPL for this season. They've done really well. The evidence of success by playing FPL in this way is really overwhelming. You can really improve your rank by using these methods, and using these methods to play a low-risk, optimal game of FPL is made easier by another trend in the state of FPL, and that is cheap player prices. Okay, so let's get this out of the way first. Fantasy Premier League is a marketing tool created by the Premier League to encourage people to watch more Premier League games. It's a mass appeal game. The more people they can get playing, the better things are for FPL. That's what they want. They want to get most people possible playing. They will always try and appease the majority of the player base and prospective new players as well. Now, if you're watching this video, you're probably not in that majority, because you know what the majority of people want? To pick a fantasy team of all of the best players in the league. They haven't heard of many of the players that you take for granted. Hwang Hee-chan, Musa Diaby, Malo Gusto, who? These people do not know who these players are. They simply want to pick a full team of players they already know and recognize. Haaland, Salah, Son, Saka, Fernandes, Foden, Alexander-Arnold. They want them all, and they don't want to think outside the box. And the only way FPL can appease this majority of players is to create a game where you can just pick all of your favorite players. That means making everyone super cheap and easy to buy for your team. The majority are happy. They don't have to think. They don't have to research. The skill gap is narrowed, and the game can be played more casually by a larger amount of people. This is not just a recent trend in FPL, but in all of gaming, because it's all about engaging and maximizing your player base. Now, of course, the trade-off here is that those of us who are already heavily engaged, serious FPL managers who aren't going anywhere regardless, we're ignored, and for good reason. Like I say, we're not going anywhere either way, no matter what FPL do to the game. The minority of heavily engaged FPL managers, they want a skill gap. We want to see our effort rewarded against those we see as not putting in as much effort as us. We want to be able to find those hidden gem players that the majority of players haven't even heard of, but we can't, because why would anyone pick Alfie Doughty when you can pick an Arsenal defender for just 0.5 million more? Why hunt for a differential Awani or Wissa when you have the money in the bank to go for someone more reliable like Watkins or Isak? Each year, it feels like the effort in FPL is rewarded less and less. But despite all of this, I actually think things are going to get a little bit better next year. Are FPL going to increase prices across the board? Hell no. Of course they're not. That would mean alienating their core player base. Any gaming business who did that would be pretty stupid. However, there are a few reasons why the 2023-24 season was an anomaly, and I think things could get back a little bit more towards normal next year. For starters, the top scoring player in the game was 5 million priced Cole Palmer. Now sure, that happens sometimes, think Mahrez or Kane many years ago, but it's pretty rare. Next season, we could have another surprise cheap top scorer, but it's pretty unlikely. Then we've got the Kane and De Bruyne factor. Now, when prices were first announced last season, Kane and De Bruyne made up half of those premium 10 million plus players. Kane left the Premier League and De Bruyne was injured in game week 1, ruling him out for the first half of the season. That means we spent 20 game weeks with just 2 premium players available to us. There was no decisions to be made because we had to pick Haaland, we had to pick Salah because we have loads of money, and it's not like we have a Kane or a De Bruyne to spend our money on anyway. We didn't have to go for those players. Our decision was made for us and the skill gap was lowered. Now that's kind of highly unusual when compared to previous seasons, and in all likeliness, players like Saka and Foden will be promoted to that 10 million plus price bracket, that category of premium players. And if that's the case, picking a team with Haaland, Salah, Saka, Foden, that's just no longer going to be affordable. And that's a good thing, right? And it will create more variance, more difference between one team and another. It will weaken the template. Now, we just have to hope that none of these players get injured or leave the Premier League. I'm looking at you, Mo Salah, because if not, we may find ourselves in the same situation once again. Now, 2023-24 also saw a lot of the expensive players simply not performing. And I think a lot of people do ignore this. Now, Manchester United and Liverpool players make up a big part of those more expensive picks in FPL. But for the majority of the season, players like Rashford, Fernandes, Trent, Jota, Luis Diaz, they were just not that useful in FPL terms. So I definitely think that there's a case to be made that actually the prices weren't as bad as we think. But a combination of circumstances meant that a lot of the expensive picks weren't, I guess, pickable players. So it felt like all of our real FPL options were cheap, when in reality, there was loads of expensive players, we were just never picking them. In reality, it's probably a little column A, little column B. So what can we learn from all of this? Well, I think what we really need to say is if you can't beat them, join them when it comes to playing analytically, using the information we have available in terms of leagues and taking advantage of those cheap prices. Now, those of you who are gamers maybe are familiar with the term the meta, or the most effective tactics available. It basically means the best game mechanics at your disposal to maximize your chances of success. Now, if you play shooters, Call of Duty, something like that, this means picking the best guns, the best hiding spots, head glitching, for example. If you play FIFA or FC online, it means picking the best players who are fast, high agility, high balance, and using specific custom tactics that can exploit those gameplay mechanics. And if your goal is to maximize your chances of doing well in any game that you play, your best bet is to use and abuse the meta. Now, FPL as a game is no different, and as a gamer myself, I already use the meta strategies in other video games to succeed. I go online, I look at what the best guns are, I go online, I look at who are the best players to buy for my FIFA team. Like, it's all exactly the same thing, and I don't think we should be treating FPL differently. I think a lot of people put FPL as football fans on a bit of a pedestal, when ultimately it is just a game and we should treat it as such. So it comes down to this: what are you playing FPL for? Are you playing FPL to win? Are you playing FPL just for fun? Is it a little bit of both? And if you are playing for fun, how big of a contributor to that fun is getting a good score and a good rank and winning your mini leagues? Do you find that aspect of FPL fun? Now, playing the meta is more methodical, it's more mechanical, and let's be honest, it's more boring. But if the success it brings you gives you joy and fulfillment, then it shouldn't be ignored. The year is 2024. Gaming meta is not going anywhere, and in the world of FPL, the meta is using an analytical approach to FPL. Each year, more and more managers are going to be using this method. The best possible approaches are going to become more refined as the game as a whole matures, and if you don't adapt, you will get left behind. You may have heard of people winning mini leagues without watching any football. I get a lot of messages all the time saying, I can't believe it, the guy who won my mini league, he doesn't even follow football, he just uses data, he just watches FPL YouTubers, and that's all he does. He doesn't even know anything about football. Well, hey, this is how it is now, but it is still possible to play analytically and enjoy watching football and playing FPL. And I'm not advocating for anyone to blindly follow robots' suggestions when playing FPL, but I also accept that this is the state of FPL right now, and there's plenty of middle ground between an analytical approach and playing purely on eye test and vibes. But ultimately, if you want to compete at the top levels, this is what you need to do now. Now, I myself will commit to taking a more analytical approach to FPL next season and hopefully help you guys do the same and improve your ranks. But I also want to prove that you can play this way, get a great rank, and still have some fun. So I hope you'll join me on this FPL revolution next season, and make sure you do subscribe if you haven't done already, because unless FPL changes next year, this will be the best way to play. I'm going to take you through it week by week, every week next season. I'd like to shout out Dis FPL for the inspiration for making this video, as well as the new champion ASC FPL, the FPL Wire Boys, and Sertalp, and all the wider analytics community, I guess, for their thought-provoking insights on the state of FPL. And finally, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the current state of FPL, what changes you'd like to make to improve the game in the future, and if you found this slightly different video interesting, do leave a like, it really does mean a lot. I will see you guys again at the weekend for some Fantasy Euros content, but until then, I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.